carried hate in me until couldn't push it out because the nightmares wouldn't let me. Always hollering, don't kill me, don't do this, don't do that. Just going back to what I'd experienced in the village and in the ghetto. I lived 4 lives. I was born in Poland in a village called Czerniejów to a Jewish parents. My given name was Yossel Margulis. In my second life, my name was, I had a Christian name. My name was Zdzisław Sosnowski, and I lived on a farm to save my life for 4 years until liberation. My third life, after liberation, ended up living in Germany, and again I changed my name to Willie Weisberg. That was my third life. My fourth life, after immigrating to the States, I again changed my name from Willie Weisberg to William J. Morgan. I was always trying to blend and get rid of my guilt as a Jew, not trusting humanity.
It was during this time that the National Socialist Party began. By 1933, the Nazis seized power in Germany as Adolf Hitler became chancellor. As the Nazis made promises to the German people, they also started blaming all of Europe's problems on the Jews. The systematic persecution of Jews began. Hitler and his generals started to fulfill their promise to the German people. Today, Germany. Tomorrow, the world. Hitler tested the political waters by making a series of treaties and alliances, and then slowly began the process of expanding the German Empire. First in Austria, no one objected. Then Sudetenland, Czechoslovakia. Again, no one objected. Then in September 1939, Hitler's army invaded Poland. The Second World War was at hand.
When I graduated school, in this elementary school, naturally the war started a year or two after. And the Germans marched into our village, moved us out of our homes and dumped us into the ghetto. I can't describe it. It was total chaos. It was starvation, beating, dying, disease. You walked over corpses, going back and forth. It was hell. I don't know what hell is. It's worse than hell to describe it. I had a pass, a working pass. I was going out every morning to work, to a farm not far from the ghetto. And going to the farm, I had to go through the Jewish cemetery. So one morning, as usual, I go to work, and a truck came with German people, the Gestapo, and stopped me. I had an armband on, put me on the truck, and dropped me off at the cemetery with some other people that were already digging mass graves. I didn't know they were mass graves. They were mass big ditches. They gave me a shovel and I joined the crew. And then when I came to a certain depth, they told us to step back behind the tombstones. And trucks started coming in with people. They made them address and they made them line up at the edge of that big pit. And they shot them one by one and they fell in that big ditch that I dug. And after witnessing the mass execution, I came home and I told my parents what I've just witnessed. Naturally, my father, being extremely religious, he didn't believe that a human species was capable of doing that. He said it's impossible. The God does not create people like that. We're all one human race, and we're all God's children. So while I was working for a farm, I saw a kid that we kicked the ball there and about my size, and I asked him if I could get his birth certificate. And sure enough, next morning he came with the document. I slipped through the ghetto fence, and I had to watch out for the Germans, and I had to watch out for the locals. And it took me about 2 hours to get to the rail station. They gave me a chance to rehearse my new name. You know, Stefan Chesnovsky, son of so-and-so, son of so-and-so, because I threw the armband away. And when I got to the station, I didn't know actually where I was going. I just hopped on a train, and I happened to see a tall farmer sitting on a bench. I sat right next to him, and we opened up a conversation. And they told me, can I go with you? And he said, you're welcome, because I told him I was looking for a job myself. It took me about 2 or 3 hours to walk up and down the village before I was hired. And that's what the Christian life began. One day I was a Jew, and next day I was a Christian. The farmer invited me, they needed a farmhand because her husband was in the service or whatever there. She gave me some food, and naturally I was hungry, and I ate, and it's the first time I had bacon in my life because I was kosher. She gave me instructions on what to do. She also invited me to sleep in the living room there, which I refused because at home I would get up at night and speak in my sleep, and naturally the language was Jewish. I couldn't sleep. I was thinking that I committed a crime by leaving my family to die and save my soul, and how can I pull this off? I'm circumcised. They're going to catch me anyhow, and I blame my parents for bringing me into this world. I had a conversation with God, why he let me down and my family, and why my father misled me and told me that we're all created equal, we are one human race, and it didn't turn out that way. The Russians liberated me and drafted me in the so-called Polish army because I had the Polish assumed name, Stefan Chesnovsky. They sent me to Moscow for basic training, and I became a truck driver. And I've heard that they were going to ship us to the front in a couple of days, and I was patrolling with a guy from my village. I was thinking to myself, I'm so close to surviving. I survived as a Jew. They're going to ship me to the front, and I'm going to die there as a Polish person. I need to take a chance and desert. So I never went back to the barracks. My friend and I deserted and hopped on a train. When I deserted, went back to the farmer. Then they killed my friend, and I immigrated back to Poland.
By this time, the war was nearing its end as the Allied forces continued putting pressure on the German army, pushing them back toward Berlin. This is when Bill Morgan learned that almost all of the Jews from his village had not survived.
All of my family was gone. My mother, my father, my brother, and my sister were all dead and lying in mass graves, like the one I had been forced to dig. I was the only person in my family to survive.
The Allied forces reached the concentration camps, and that is when the whole world learned the truth about Hitler's final solution.
There was a Holocaust, and it was proof that the Nazis had murdered millions and millions of men, women, and children. But that time I had a trade, I had a driver's license. Remember when basic training taught me how to drive. So when back to Poland, I looked for a job. So I got a job as a truck driver in a truck depot. About 2 days later, a Polish officer and a civilian came and hired me out. It happened those two people were Jewish. They hired me to go to different part of towns, and they were dealing in a black market. And they spoke Jewish among themselves, so I wouldn't understand. Naturally, I understood everything they were saying. And I couldn't believe myself that Jews survived because I didn't know anything about camps. So then, about a day before, they said, well, it's no use going anymore. We can't make any money. It's too risky. We're just going, this could be our last day. So I told them, you guys, you know, in Yiddish, and they looked at me. I said, yes, I'm Jewish. He said, I can't believe it. I said, I understood everything you were saying, and you told me you were leaving, and I don't want to lose you. And I had to strip my pants to convince him. Then they opened up, and they told me what I could do. That most of the survivors are going to West Germany. They have organizations that would help them there, find their families, they will feed you, and they will help you, and they give you clothes. And don't go back to where you came from, he said, because they are killing people, local people are killing the survivors. So don't go back. I was afraid of the Germans, even so the war was over. Every German I saw, I pictured them killing my family or the Jewish people in the village. So I figured I'm going to blend with the Germans and become Willie Weisberg. I can give myself a name, what the hell. You know, don't forget, when I was in Germany, I registered to immigrate to the United States. I had no choice. The first destination was, I had a sponsor from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, that I had sent a visa and guaranteed a place to work and a place to stay and a place to eat. Otherwise, I couldn't come into the States. His name was Sam Cohn. He had a shoe store there. So he sent a visa to bring me over to the United States. The first destination was leaving Germany, landing in New York. I wanted to blend. So from Willie Weisberg, when I immigrated to the United States, said I'm going to maintain some letters there because my name is Margulis, so I'd be Morgan. So I went into the phone book and picked a phone book name, Morgan. But the middle name I maintained as Jewish, William Jacob Morgan. And this I ended up with the name Morgan. In New York, I was picked up by a HIAS organization, spent the night there, and then I was taken back to the train and shipped back to Cedar Rapids, Iowa. That was my destination, according to the papers. When I arrived there, they picked me up from the station and told me, you stay at the YMCA, you eat at that Greek restaurant, and you work at that shoe store. They lined me up for that day. Went to YMCA, and that's the first time, I don't know, I told you, that I had a room and a bed. I slept in a bed, because I never slept in a bed. Even at home, I slept on a box with straw in it. That's the first time I slept in a bed when I was 24 years old then. And this is my career began. I started out as a janitor, because I didn't speak the language. I spoke 4 languages. But I didn't speak English. I spoke Yiddish, I spoke Polish, I spoke Russian, I spoke German. 4 languages, but they were no good. So my first job was to learn the language. Went to night school there, and I copied various words or sentences every day and pasted it in front of my bed. So before I went to sleep, I had to rehearse them and rehearse them and rehearse them. Once I learned them, I took them down, put some new words, and And from then on, I became a shoe store manager in Kansas City. Then I quit there, and I followed Roy Rogers, came to here to find Roy Rogers and the horse Trigger. I didn't know he was in Los Angeles. I thought all the cowboys are in Texas. Since I already had a trade, I was a shoe dog, so I got a job at Foley's as a shoe salesman, and I did excellent. I was on commission, making $85, $100 a week. And as a shoe store manager, I made 36. Looking at the business section of the newspaper, and I found a little snack bar for sale. I called the broker. We sat down, and I talked to the owner, and I begged him to, he's not going to be sorry. And whatever he's asking, mark it up a little more. Says, so you make money, give me a break. Then I figured if I learned, caught on quite fast, and built the business up, and 2 years later I sold it and made double the money I paid for. I had a guy that I was buying meat from. I said, well, I know a little bit about meat business. I was buying hamburger and sausages. I said, I'll go buy some meat wholesale and sell retail. And ended up buying a big refrigerated truck. And I was doing quite well. I didn't have a packing house. And they were buying from packing houses. Went to a loan broker. He made me a loan, and I built a packing house. I bought a couple of trucks, hired some salesmen, almost a full-fledged packing house, selling to grocery stores and restaurants. When I went into the meat business and I had a refrigerated truck, I couldn't keep the truck at the YMCA because I had to plug it in overnight. So I had to move out of there and find me a room on Blodgett Street. So this is how I met Shirley next door. And so I noticed a girl going back and forth next door, and I opened up a little conversation, and she was pleasant. And then I saw her again, and we talked again, and sort of, well, let me try to ask her out, you know. When I asked her out, she told me she was already engaged.
And he came up to me, and he saw my engagement ring, and he said, gee, it's very pretty. I'll give you $25 to send it back, and I'll get you one just like it. It was a beautiful ceremony. And with all our family there, it was very well done. I was very excited when I was going to have my first child. Much to my surprise, when this little boy was born, you have never seen anybody so happy in your whole life.
Yeah. I remember looking at Ronnie. He had a big head, remember? And the first thing that came to my mind, he looked like my older brother. Remember
Really?
I told you that? Solomon was my brother. He looked exactly like him in a way. And the older he got, the more he looked like my brother. And you can imagine the feeling that I've got, that finally you have, there's something there that resembles my family.
Thinking about how tough it was in the beginning, my dad coming from nothing, raising 5 kids, I don't know how he did that. I still don't know how he did that. My mom, I don't know how they put up with us. But if you look around and you think there's 5 of us, there's 10 grandkids now. Our family is very close, and I just try to compare that with any other family that I know, and I can't. I mean, there's nobody out there that's like us, that is as close as we are, and has come from such a different background and has been able to keep it together like we have. I mean, that's all due to my mom and my dad. As weird as my dad might have been because of his background and growing up, it is different. I mean, they both did something right, and we're very happy for that.
A buyer came in and said, we're looking to buy a packing house. Would you be interested to sell? And I quoted him, I thought, a big price. He didn't say anything. He gave me what I asked for. I was a millionaire, that time. So I took a little vacation, look around, see what I can do since I have money, and what the best opportunity is to really make big money. So I decided I will go in the real estate business. I started with 2 houses, then 4 houses, then 20 houses. Worked hard, and became a pretty good sized developer. When the children came into my business, I advised them to become a little bigger because things are getting real tough and there's too many big people go in and it's too competitive. And the rest is history. We changed the skyline of the city of Houston and became one of the top 10 builders in the country.
He held his emotions back for many years. After we had children, I saw it coming out a little bit. And he would come into the house and he would look at the child and just pass him up, and I would have to say, stop, pat him on the head, pick him up, give him a hug, you know, and I more or less had to teach him how to give love.
But then I was not a good father or a good husband, and I would come home from work worn out and I wouldn't show any feeling to my children. So my wife came to me and says that I have to change. You have children now, you have to hug them and kiss them, show them a little love. And from that point on, I worked on myself. I tried to remove hate from my heart and try to be a normal person, which was difficult. People still say that there was no Holocaust. All kind of deny us. My biggest fear is I'm afraid that my children, great-grandchildren may have to go through that I went through. I don't fully trust humanity, as you see what's going on. Anti-Semitism is on the rise, and I got caught in Poland to where another crazy guy comes up, like the Iranian president says that Israel should be destroyed and Jewish people are no good. And naturally, I'm afraid that history may repeat itself. That's what I'm afraid of. I can't quite understand the world and why we are so mean. You know, if we're not doing enough, I guess we have to, the only thing left to do is dialogue and education. So today, thanks to the generosity of our people of this community, we are breaking ground to build what I call a house of love, Houston Holocaust Educational Center. So we convert hate into love and build a better community for all of us to live in. I figured if I built a Holocaust museum, that we can remember the dead and educate the living so history would not repeat itself. When I say education, I mean children, adults, dialogue, reach out, get along, mingle. There are about 120 different nationalities living in this city, and everyone is unique in their own way. You know, we all like to go to Chinese and Delhi and Korean and sushi, and yet we can get along. We like their food, we like their customs, and we can get along. And by building the museum, I realized that nobody asks you, how were you? They ask you, how are you? I couldn't live by the past. And if I am to enjoy the fruits of my labor, I have to change my heart and and try to join humanity and do what God created me to do.